How's it going, everyone? So, unfortunately, I did not run out and buy an RTX 4080 Super to just test it on the channel. Mel, if you're watching this and you have an extra one, feel free to hit me up and I will do that on the channel. So, I instead decided to compile all of the larger YouTube channels' conclusion segments of their videos in a long compilation so that you guys can watch everyone's conclusions. There are a few that are a little weird, like Linus Tech Tips decided to compile all of the Super Series from the entire month into one conclusion. And so these are just short segments of their final thoughts and conclusions on the card or cards themselves. So before I start this video, I'm not going to keep my head up in the corner the entire time, but I really wanted to point out this segment in the video that Linus did. And not typically, I'm not always watching and agreeing with everything Linus says, but he pretty much word for word repeated the video I had put out yesterday, which had a pretty up and down like to dislike ratio. I think a lot of people were very skeptical before the 4080 Super came out with the percentage increases and all that stuff. But now that we know it was really not a good increase at all, and it was just a price cut, I wanted to tell you that the point of the entire video was not to tell you not to buy an RTX 4080 Super or 40 series card in general, but it was to tell you to look at exactly the past, the Turing cards, and compare them to today, the future. We always talk about video games and how we shouldn't be spending money on bad games or, rewarding companies like Activision for putting out crap over and over again. If we do the same thing with Nvidia, who has now done this 2 times in a row, aka Turing and the 40 series, we're basically encouraging them to do it again. We might have a great RTX 5000 series launch, but then maybe the 6000 series is going to have a Super again. Anyways, let's just jump into the video. I had to get that out there because the video was, kind of like the dislike ratio was a little crazy, and there are quite a few comments on there. So let's jump into the video.
You are, probably because you're pretty smart and observant. NVIDIA is pulling from the exact same playbook as they did with the 20 series. Seriously, stop me if this sounds familiar. You release a generation of cards that is perceived as not offering a very good value, and in fact, not offering much in the way of a performance improvement over the last gen. Then you do a mid-cycle super refresh so that you can say, yeah, we know this one was kind of a downer, but we're listening. Well, that may have been a very long 4.5 years ago, but I haven't forgotten NVIDIA. And how is it that you thought that this was worth dragging out over a month-plus long series of launch events? Did anyone else notice that they gave nothing to the gamers who already had the least this generation? What about people who have less than $500 US to spend on a gaming accessory? NVIDIA is basically yielding that customer to Sony or Microsoft. So I hate to say it, but unless Intel Arc Battle Mage swoops in to save us, APUs might be the future that we have to look forward to for budget PC gaming. As for the future of this video,
1200, because that's a big increase. In this case, we can't praise NVIDIA for basically doing what it should have done a long time ago. We can, however, say that this is a better situation. Our hesitation, again, to fully embrace the product kind of goes back to not getting suckered into believing this is kind of the new method for keeping the average prices high. But it's at least improved. Now, all that said, one thing we noticed as a positive in our efficiency testing, the 7600 XT review, was that the 4080 had we had a newfound appreciation for it, where previously we had very little, at least based on the original kind of review performance numbers, products at the time it came out. But the newfound appreciation was specifically for efficiency, where in terms of performance per watt, or however you want to look at that, the 4080 was actually impressive. And the 4080 Super is basically the same thing here.
So what you're going to notice on the charts is some tests, it's going to be a bit of a gap between a 4080 and not, but the most we'll see is like 5%. Sometimes it's barely anything. Sometimes it's a couple of FPS, spoiler alert. But the only interesting story here, to be honest, is the fact that it's dropped in price from an MSRP of $1199 down to $999. So any additional performance for $200 less is a good thing. Again, I still think they're too expensive, but more for less is never a bad thing. Even if it was exactly the same for $999, it would have been a good thing. So RIP 4080 buyers, anyone that bought a 4080 within the last month or two, that's gonna sort of suck because you could have paid less. But realistically, here's what I think is gonna happen. I think all your custom AIB cards are gonna be $1,200 up to 1,200 and even higher, because all that really did was push down the MSRP, where now the custom cards will be at like MSRP, whereas like 4080 non-MSRP cards were like 1,500 bucks. I mean, there was even like an RS 4080 water-cooled thing for like 1,800, which was $200 more than a 4090, which is really stupid.
A couple years later, when NVIDIA launched the RTX 40 series, they decided, those high prices due to cryptocurrency mining sure are nice for how much money we've been making. So why don't we make the next gen RTX 4080, the successor to the 3080, like 1,200 bucks. About a $500 markup over the $700 MSRP of its predecessor. Now, I can't speak to the actual sales of the RTX 4080 at $1,200, but I do know that it wasn't insanely popular. It was a really difficult price to swallow for anyone but people who were buying the highest tier of card, and for that class of people, well, you're probably just going to opt for the RTX 4090 instead, for around $1,600 to closer to $2,000 these days. Now, I've talked quite a few times before about how NVIDIA and lots of companies in the tech space use a technique called anchoring to try to increase the perceived value of their products over time. And NVIDIA has been anchoring the price of the RTX 4080 at 1,200 bucks for a while now. But now that we've all gotten used to that insanely high price for the RTX 4080, the 4080 Super has arrived with a discount, $1,000 instead of $1,200. And that is the biggest selling point of this graphics card, because I'm going to tell you guys right now, it is not much faster at all than the RTX 4080. And in fact, I'm looking at this more like a relaunch of the RTX 4080, but since NVIDIA doesn't like to discount their products because it implies weakness or something like that, they lowered the price of a different product, the RTX 4080 Super, and now it's $1,000. Are we happy about the $1,000 RTX 4080 Super as compared to the $1,200 RTX 4080 non-Super? Or are we still miffed at NVIDIA's $500 price bump, and reducing that by $200 isn't really doing a whole lot for us right now?
And so here we are with the RTX 4080 Super, which, and let's be honest here, is essentially the same thing as the RTX 4080 non-Super, just with a new paint job and some tiny spec tweaks which do not make any meaningful difference to performance. But what you do get is a $999 MSRP. Relative to the 4090 then, the value proposition increases, so in that sense there is the argument that this is the price point the 4080 should have launched with. But on the flip side, still a big increase over the 3080, and I do think that as you hit the $1,000 threshold, you're entering Halo territory. But as you'll see, as good as the 4080 Super is on its own terms, it's not a 4090, and it's nothing like that.
So there you have it. The RTX 4080 is now 3 to 4% faster, and it costs $200 US less. So it's all positive in that sense, but is it enough after 14 months? As I said earlier, this really is what the RTX 4080 should have been from the start, and even then it would have only been really a very mild improvement over the RTX 3080. For it to be a true generational uplift, it would need to cost no more than $800, so that explains why the RTX 4080 was so poorly received upon launch and ultimately didn't sell that well. Of course, NVIDIA's none too phased given the demand AI has generated for their GPUs. They really lucked it out the moment crypto went bust. The question still remains though, is a $1,000 RTX 4080 an attractive option in early 2024? I ask this because I suspect most who wanted this level of performance already pulled the trigger on a 4080 at $1,200 US, or got the 7900 XTX for $1,000. So I'm not really sure if those who have been holding out all this time for something better are going to jump on a $1,000 4080. But I suppose if you are in the market for a high-end GPU and your budget can accommodate for an RTX 4080 Super or 7900 XTX, you're probably asking yourself which one should you get. For me, the 4080 Super, it's a pretty easy pick here, given that they both do cost around $1,000 US.
I want to talk about this in particular though, because obviously a lot of you guys have seen on the channel, like I've been getting review samples now, which is pretty surreal. And it's honestly an honor to be in this position where I'm sent things to review that my opinion and how I validate things or test things actually matters. And that is brought to, like, this position is brought to me by you guys, and I'm just glad that you guys have enjoyed the content. That doesn't really like shape how I view the card. Obviously, I'm still looking at this completely objectively. I don't think I buy this personally. It is very fast. I'm honored to be able to use it and test it, but I don't think I would ever buy this myself. I would be something, I'd be getting like a 7800 XT if I'm being honest. That's just me. That's where I think the best value is. Let me know what you guys think about the RTX 4080 Super. Obviously, price cut on the RTX 4080 basically, but I wanted to have more in-depth conversation about how the value actually adds up and what tangible benefits do you actually get from spending this much on a graphics card, because it's not as much as you would think. Okay, the price to performance is not amazing. Let me know what you think in the comments about this card below, and is like pricing on GPUs getting completely out of hand, or did this help bring it to earth?
So I had to throw Vex in there as the last person on the reviews. A couple reasons. Congratulations, dude. I have been following this guy for a long time. I think it's awesome. He's already at 55k subs, and he's like constantly growing. So he's a really impressive channel. If you guys haven't seen or checked out Vex, like definitely check him out. I thought he had a really good total breakdown on the RTX 4080 Super, very down to earth. And even though he got a review sample, he still said it how it was at the very end. He was like, hey, this is what I would buy. It's not for me, but it's still a decent card overall. So that was really cool. And yeah, it's going to do it for this video, guys. If you like the video, drop a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.